are these people?
Well, I wanted to end us out here with a
Yay!
bit of notes from Caitlin.
Fun story.
Yeah.
Fun story.
So have you ever read one of the notes from the narrative matrix from Caitlin? It's a kind of a format she does, which I think is very digestible for people. It's really easy to actually go read yourselves, because I'm not going to do it every week, but she literally does these frequently. So like, go to her website, bookmark it, check in, right? But these are essentially, I feel like it's like stories that Caitlin couldn't put together into a big story. So she just kind of throws them all together.
So these are like just journal notes that you might write.
Almost, yeah.
Just random thoughts, kind of.
So access journalism at its most pernicious. Modern Western national security journalism is mostly just writing what a government official tells you to write and then calling it a scoop, which you got from a nameless source in the government. Okay, so this is on September 5th, so literally yesterday. So this is the first little segment from the notes on this. So is what she has this title under. So modern Western national security journalism is mostly just writing what a government official tells you to write, calling it a scoop, which you got from a nameless source in the government. New York Times editors changed a recent headline from, quote, "As Ukraine's fight falters, it gets even harder to talk about negotiations." Okay, to, "As Ukraine's fight grinds on, talks of negotiations becomes nearly taboo." So that's the two differences, right? Apparently, for no other reason than because grinds on advances the information interests of the U.S. empire better than falters.
Right.
A lot of propaganda.
We want to show that we're working towards winning versus losing.
Losing, right. So a lot of propaganda emphasis goes into crafting headlines because the vast majority of people only read the headline. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we see this on YouTube. Like, that's why you might see, like capitalized text on videos, like with the verb, like
me and Collin have made it a point.
Reef destroys, whatever, like.
So we make it a point like, to read the whole article. We read the whole article on air. I know it's long. I know it takes us a while, especially for longer articles. But otherwise, none of you would read it. No, like nobody else would read it.
You would hear about it. Otherwise,
so
or there might be some information that you miss.
Right.
If you don't get the full context.
If you want that, you can come here, and we'll read it to you like good little bedtime stories.
Right.
So as Ukraine fights grind. Right. So only the headline of a news story and not the body of the text. If your interests are in propaganda and narrative control rather than news reporting, headlines are where your focus lie.
Again, see that on YouTube all the time, even in our space.
Modern Western national security, literally, yep. Modern Western national security journalism is mostly just writing what a government official tells you to write and then calling it a scoop you got from a nameless source in the government. She's put this in here multiple times. It's important.
Right.
So one of the many problems with this system of news reporting is that it gives the government a tremendous amount of leverage over mass media outlets, because if the New York Times or CNN don't write what a government agency or official wants them to write, they can lose access to that source and all the scoops that come with it. I said in a conversation with Indy about this yesterday, that goes both ways. That the CIA also doesn't want to lose its access to these agencies. So they are willing to give them a story or two, right? So that they can continue this quid pro quo. Quid pro yo.
Right.
Quid pro yo. If the New York Times started doing actual journalism and closely scrutinizing the U.S. intelligence cartel, for example, the CIA could just decide that the New York Times is now off limits and all the insider scoops go to different outlets instead. The New York Times would then immediately lose prominence while someone else gains it, and they lose all the clicks and subscriptions that they were getting from being a consistent source of breaking news on that front. Correct?
Right.
Which is why That never happens. A symbiotic relationship that has been created in which news outlets benefits from powerful sources and powerful sources benefit from uncritical news reporting. I swear I just said this. The news outlet reports what they're told to report in order to keep their steady supply of scoops, and in exchange, they get all the money and prestige that go with it. The government gets uncritical regurgitation of talking points which serve the information interests of the Western Empire in the moment. Again, that's Squid Froyo. This is access journalism at its most pernicious. Access journalism is destructive enough when it's a prominent official refusing to give interviews to unsympathetic reporters. Cough, Kennedy cough. But once you get entire government agencies driving the entire news media information, Max Blumenthal, he does some stuff on Palestine. Maybe you should sphere by determining who does and does not receive scoops on foreign conflicts and international affairs. You've got a system of straight up state propaganda, Care Bear, as we know so well. So that's where Miss Caitlin is on Access Journalism.
Wait, you missed the slide.
I know it's her next bit of notes.
Okay.
So, but I just want to get your take on that one before you go to the other ones. So.
Okay. So there's a few parts to it. Yeah. I mean, I mean, you can make the case for independent media as well.
Yep.
Most
definitely can.
And we were off for 2 weeks, but Reef and I and Indy have been talking a lot over the last few weeks, just in terms of, I think, how frustrated we are in terms of, and that's not necessarily the fault of you guys watching, but I think what independent media, and the big reason why I started doing this is because I want to help elevate voices that are not otherwise heard.
Yep.
That includes you guys. That includes, the people that we've been
through the propaganda.
Right. But to give you guys other options in terms of where to find articles if you do read them, but like giving you alternative opinions in terms of what mainstream media would force feed you. And we've done it here, like even the best of what we read in terms of outlets that we like sometimes also get it wrong. They also kind of bring in that mainstream talking points as well, which I think especially has debunked even in the last few weeks. Yep. But what I feel independent media has become is more or less like riding the coattails of certain personalities, in terms of viewership and clicks and subs and all that kind of stuff.
It's listening to react versus understanding. I think that's my
understanding and learning and actually taking action on shit.
When it's like, for me, it's become with traumatic anything, like my go-to is when dealing with trauma, I seek understanding, because if I don't understand what's happening, I can't fix the problem. Right. So that goes with all of this. Like our entire life and existence is a traumatic one right now. So trying to figure out and understanding what is actually happening, which you can only do by like listening to understanding and finding the sources you can actually do that with. So, we're going to try to bring you that and sort through it ourselves so that you don't have to do as much work. But, but that's why you're here for our little journey. But, Caitlin has a bit more. So if you've not done notes from a narrative before, this is essentially like, it's another, when you see these stars or whatever, it's a new subject, right? So literally this was just this paragraph. Instead of literally going to war with Mexican cartels, has anyone considered simply not having a shit-brained and completely unscientific drug policy that has been in continuous state of failure since its inception? End of sentence. It's like one sentence from Caitlin, and then she's like, "All right, I got that out. Good." So here's another little section from her. It's silly to let yourself be pulled from the left to the right Mainstream liberals are pathetic, and the authentic socialist left, communist left, whatever you want to call them. I mean, she means socialist left, can be aggravating as fuck, but the values which drew you to the left in the first place are still grounded in deep truth and just as valid as
Yes.
ever. Other people on the
Yes.
left and pseudo left being obnoxious doesn't magically invalidate the world's need for peace, justice, and equality. Your disagreements and grievances with a given political faction don't magically cancel out the urgent need to end capitalism and imperialism. Don't let the failings of other people and the general confused state of our species cause you to lose sight of your healthy vision for this world that got you interested in politics in the first place. Very poignant from Caitlin, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like we've said these exact things before as well. So, you know, here's another little section that she did. It's probably worth noting that Ukraine was always just one of the multiple fronts on which the U.S. empire was dangerously provoking and escalating against Russia as part of the new Cold War. There was also Syria, the NATO military buildup in the Baltic region, shredded treaties, sanctions, and increasingly aggressive nuclear posture reviews. Much of this under the Trump administration, interestingly enough. Keep in mind, the late Stephen Cohen was urgently warning about these multi-front escalations years before the Ukraine war. Quote, we're at maybe the most dangerous moment in U.S. relations in my lifetime and maybe ever, Cohen told who, everyone? The Young Turks in 2017. And the reason is that we're in a new Cold War by whatever name. We have 3 Cold War fronts that are fraught with the possibility of hot war. In the Baltic region, where NATO is carrying out an unprecedented military buildup on Russia's border. In Ukraine, where there's a civil and proxy war between Russia and the West. And of course, in Syria, where Russian aircraft and American warplanes are flying in the same territory. Anything can happen, he told the Young Turks in 2017. Okay? So if they're acting like they don't know better, they're lying. Okay? We were headed towards some kind of horrific confrontation between Russia and the empire, no matter what. Ukraine just happened to be the one that landed first. Moscow was always going to draw a line somewhere. So that's all she had to write. So, a little quick, easily digestible, couple of paragraphs, nice succinct things for people to go read. Thoughts on any of those last ones, Care Bear? So you're like, awesome. No, she wrote it. She did the thing.
She did the thing. But I'm not sure if I'm necessarily a fan of that. I get, like, it just seems like for her, like a stream of consciousness that she's writing down, kind of. Not sure if I'm a fan of that format, considering what I'm more used to her, though.
Yes.
So
I think that's my thing with it, is that, like, I don't do them often because of that, but occasionally I think it might be, like, they're good little things to react to for, like, I don't know, if you're another outlet looking for content and you need nice, short, punchy things, those are great. So,
right.
But anyway, I think that's it.
Before we go, Dr. Nick asked, and I want to ask you, because I'm sure people will be asking us anyway, our take on the West. Well, are we going to provide a take? I think we can kind of say it clear here. More than likely, no. We're not going to provide our own take.
Yeah, I just don't care enough, mainly.
Well, let's rephrase. It's not that we don't care about it. It's almost in line of what Caitlin just wrote about.
Right.
It's the idea of, like, that's going to be what's the main thing that's going to be talked about for the next 2 weeks. Okay. Yep. You don't need to hear us and our opinion. I think if you know us,
you could take guesses.
Know you can probably take educated guesses as to what we think, and
if it gets to a bigger story about it, we might have to, but
right. But our general rule of thumb, and this is something that Reef and I have committed to, on this show. Like the reason why that we believe that you guys show up, that also might be also the reason why we're not as big as we would like to be. But that's not to say that's not an issue for us. We definitely want to grow, but we want to be authentic in terms of talking about stuff that you guys may not necessarily know. And that's what we're kind of committed to.